Yo, we've got another image sent in, and we've got a really flat looking style that uses a lot of grain, a lot of vibrance. So if I just come down, I'll show you guys on her Instagram, and you guys can go give her a follow down in the description. I always put their links down in the description, guys, so go down there and follow them if you like their work. And yeah, comment who you guys want to see down in the comments, because then I go through all the comments and then I reach out to them on Instagram, ask them to send in a photo and do a tutorial on them. But let's get over to her Instagram and I'll show you the photo we're working with. So if we come down, we are going to be working with one of these shots, this shot right here. So this is a great shot because it has plenty of colors in it, so we'll be able to figure out exactly how she edited it. And yeah, you can see that we've got really flat highlights and then there's very little shadows, so those shadows have been taken out a lot, and yeah, a lot of vibrance to the image as well. So you guys go give her a follow down in the description, and let's get into this tutorial, see if we can create a nice amount of vibrance, a bit of flatness in those blacks and shadows. As you can see, those shadows and blacks aren't very dark, and then so that's going to be done with the tone curve. And then yeah, we're going to make those skin tones pop, those reds and oranges pop. And we'll just quickly talk about some of the settings used. So this was shot at 16mm, and that actually looks more like 24mm, and that's because she's using the A6300. So that's a crop sensor camera, and that 16mm looks a bit more like 24. We've got an f-stop of f5, so as you can see, the background is in focus, those bushes way back in the background, nice and sharp. We've got ISO at 100 because it's very bright, there's no need to bump it up, and then a quick shutter speed at 400. So, and that's just to expose the image correctly. And yeah, let's get into this tutorial and see if we can create something like this. Here's the unedited image and then the edited one over here. Let's get straight into it. Let's bring up the warmth because we've got a nice warm vibrant look to this image. So let's go up to about there. It looks kind of yellow and green now. So what's happened is we've got a lot of yellows now because we pretty much added warmth to the entire image, and that means it added warmth to areas that already were warm. And now those areas are too warm, like down here for example, that's a yellow color, and that we've added warmth into the image, it's gone really, really yellow. So let's drop these down. And now we have a nice amount of warmth throughout the entire image and not too much in those bits that were already pretty warm. So coming back up, okay, let's brighten this image a bit. We want a nice vibrant look. It's on the overexposed side, and we're not going to do a lot with contrast because if you zoom into areas like this, the darkest areas of the image, you can see they're not that dark. It's quite a flat looking image, so contrast can stay pretty much in the middle there. We're going to get most of the contrast we do have with the curves. We definitely want to bring up the shadows because we've got this really vibrant look to the image. So taking out the shadows just gives this real warm look to the image. We want to drop the highlights because if you look up here, look at the brightest areas, just drop them because you can see all the outlines of the clouds. You just want to sort of match up the detail there. So if it was up here, you see you just can't see the outline of those clouds up there. So I'm dropping it, and I also know to drop it because it's a very, very common thing I see done all the time, and it's just it helps get the flat look to your images, and I'll explain a bit more about that later on. Okay, the whites, let's drop the whites a little. And then the blacks to keep a little bit of contrast in the image, because we will soften up that contrast with the curves here. We're going to add in that little bit of fade in the blacks with the curves, so we need to bring it down a bit so then we can lift it up to get a fade, because if we didn't have enough blacks, we'd lift it up to get a fade and then the image would look like too washed out. So we need a little bit there. It's just maybe chuck in a little bit of vibrance to just get a bit more of a pop, because we want a nice bright vibrant feel to the image. Okay, I think we're looking good. Let's move on to this curve now. So what I'm looking to do is just to add in some contrast in the shadows, so bring these shadows down, highlights up, and then just a bit of a fade in those blacks. We'll just adjust it a bit, and now I'll just go fine tune this. Okay, so that's the curve done, and what I've done is just brought up that black point for that very slight fade, so you can see that fade if you zoom into the darkest areas. Just a slight fade there. Bring down the white point, so we've got this flat looking image, and it's also got a little amount of contrast up here, so not much contrast in here because we brought up the shadows, brought down the whites, but it's also flat in the curves here by bringing down the whites. So if you look up here, you can see it's not flat now, and then when I bring down that white point, you can see what it does, how it just sort of takes out that detail up there, and you can see along there as well how it just really flattens out. It's up there, and then when I bring it down, it looks a lot more like this one over here. So what I'll do real quick is just add in lots of grain, because this image has quite a bit of grain. So that'll get us a lot closer to what we want. So even if I just show you that again with the grain, you can see how we're nice and flat back there. Let's lift that up. You can see it's way too bright now. So let's drop that, and that's how you get that little flat look through, in your highlights and whites. Okay, let's do a bit of colors now, maybe split toning. So we look quite yellow in the image, and if I look up here, we look a little, maybe a little too yellow or so. I'm going to put some blues in the highlights, and hopefully that just all down here and stuff, we just look really warm. And that's because we added in a lot of warmth. But let's go for the highlights now. Add in a little bit of blue, but then in the shadows, so if you look, it's quite hard to spot in this image because there's not many shadows and there's not many blacks, but there is a warmth to it. So let's bring up some like reds in the shadows, and that makes it look really warm. And then our skin tones are all off at the moment, but okay, so we look a little cooled off now. I want to keep it kind of warm, so what I'm going to do is just shift this over in this direction, and that's going to put more of these reds into the image. As you can see, it goes pretty warm. You just want to keep those blues in the brightest areas, and that's what we've done by doing this. So that's blues in the entire image, that's reds in the entire image. I'm just going to put it about there, and then the majority of the image has the shadows going into it, but our whites and highlights are kept nice and blue, which just makes more sense, makes it look a little more natural. And okay, so you can tell our colors are way off now. We just need to mess around with some saturation. So let's drop the oranges. As you can see, they are way too saturated. Maybe should have done this earlier on because it might have made noticing split toning much easier. So if I just, maybe if I take all these down. So greens, so back there, the dress, just matching them up. Aqua, so not a lot of aqua. Blues. So for hue, so for example, here's the building here, it looks really purple. Let's shift the blues over in this direction and it's going to give us a much nicer teal. Aquas, so it's very slightly affecting the sky back there. And a little bit of the wall. I'm not sure what to do with that. I might just leave it. I might leave it over there, over this direction, because I feel like they're a little more blue maybe. Okay, so these greens, since we've added so much warmth to the image, we wanted heaps of warmth throughout the image to give that real warm vibe, but now our greens look kinda unnaturally warm or so. It's personal preference, like the style you're going for, but if you shift the greens to more of a blue, they'll sort of go back to what they looked like before you added in the warmth. So now we've taken out a little bit of that warmth to the greens, and yeah, well, that's what this image looks like a bit. And okay, reds. So looking down here, just wherever the reds are affecting the wall there, let's shift it much further across. That looks good. Oranges. So it's affecting the same areas as the reds. So if I just slide the oranges back and forth, slide the reds back and forth. It can be tricky when the colors are affecting the same areas, but you want to look at things like the lips or so that only the reds affect, and then shift your reds in terms of that, so the lips also, or the redness of the hand, and then choose an area. So the oranges affect a much larger area. So I think about there can look alright. Then our yellows, we look maybe a touch purplish or something. Yellows, a little warm. Like I'm looking down here and we look really quite rich in there. Let's just lighten it up a bit, give it a little more of a green tone. So this direction, only a bit. I think we're good there. Right, I think we're good. Let's come down to luminance. So this is the deepness and brightness of the colors. And since we're going for a real vibrant look to our image, we've taken the shadows out, we've added in warmth, and now we want to add brightness to just certain colors of the image. So yellows is always a really good idea to bring up if you're going for this real vibrant look, because what's happening is the yellows is sort of like the light hitting everything. So if you bring up the luminance of the yellows, it just looks like the image is just really shining. So I'm going to bring that up quite a bit. And the oranges, going to bring up a bit. So as you can see, that's affecting the edges of a lot as well. And it's going to give a nice vibrant look. And then the reds, so you want to create color contrast, but you can also do it in terms of like luminance. So since the reds are right next to the oranges in the image, if you shift them in opposite directions, it's going to create contrast in the image, which can look really nice. If you've got quite bright oranges of your skin and then quite deep reds, this is over exaggerating, but it can look quite nice. So or if you bring up the luminance of the oranges, you can sort of tell the oranges have maybe brought up. You'll be like, her skin isn't quite deep enough. It can look kind of odd, but if you balance that with deepening the reds because they're pretty close to the oranges, you can get something quite nice. And then the greens, so if you look at the trees back here, they have a very, very slight glow to them, especially these ones, or the dress. If you look at the dress, consider bringing the greens up as well because they will get a nice shine to them. But we'll just do it a little bit. Okay, that looks good. Right, if we come down, so we are working with a JPEG, and as you can see, it's been edited pretty well. It looks a little low quality, and a tip is when you're working with JPEGs, iPhone photos, is to bring up the denoise. So watch what happens when I bring this up. It really, really smooths out the whole image. There's too much at the moment. I quite like 20. I think 20 is a good number. And then, so if I just turn that on and off, hopefully you guys can see what it's doing. So that is noise reduction off and on. So smooths it out, makes it look much more natural. You lose some sharpness, so I'm going to add in a bit of sharpening. And right, I think we are about good here. Nothing else really needed. We didn't need RGB curves. You might have used them, I don't know. When you get an image so flat like this, you sort of don't need curves here, and we're able to achieve all the colors there. So yeah, so we've got quite a harsh S curve here, and that's because we've got no S curve in the red, green and blue channels. You could definitely do this with doing the red, green and blue channels, but yeah, just a harsher. You can see how this can be quite tricky working with such a harsh curve down here. So what you might want to do is just add a gentle curve in the red, green and blue channels, and then you won't have to do such a harsh curve here, because this can become quite hard to work with. Like you start putting lots of dots because you want it kind of like, you want a nice, when you put a fade in, you want it to make it nice and gradual, and by doing it like this, it kind of makes it kind of harsh. So that might be something you might want to think about. Otherwise, yeah, the keys to this image was bringing up the shadows. So if I drop the shadows, you can see we've created a really warm, vibrant look there. Also bringing down that whites. So if you look up there, that's how you get the flatness. And then you could also bring down the midtones, but that kind of makes it, you might want to have to bring up the, yeah, that's how you get extra flatness. But keeping the midtones up for this image keeps it kind of popping still, slightly to the blacks. And yeah, luminance those yellows because we want a nice vibrant look. And yeah, bringing down those yellows because we added in warmth to the entire image up here. So our yellows got a bit too saturated, so bringing them down a lot. And yeah, I'll just leave it there, guys. Quite a bit of grain there, nice and rough. So if I bring the roughness down, you can see those dots get smaller, and then bringing roughness up. And that can really help create flatness to the image. So what you're trying to achieve with the fades here is flatness. So grain can create a texture to the entire image. Like the entire image all has the exact same texture, and that helps create a layer to your image. And that's sort of what this does as well. Sort of makes it look like you're looking at the photo through an overlay or something like that. But yeah, I'll just leave it there, guys. And yeah, hope you like this one. Here's a before and after. Hope you like that one, guys. All her links are down in the description, guys. Go give her a follow down there. Let her know you found her through these tutorials. And I've also started a Patreon, so if you guys want to support this channel, it would allow me to put out way more tutorials. I've been getting so many messages about how these tutorials have allowed you guys to hugely improve your skills. So that would allow me to produce more of these tutorials for as little as $5 a month. Video Luts. So if you guys like my photo editing, you'll probably really like my video editing. So Luts and color grades for video, go over to my website. It's all over there for you guys. And yeah, leave a like, leave a comment, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.